Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night. You listen to United Public Radio, 107.7 FM New Orleans. And I got a few things I got to plug for Joe, the network. First off, I got to plug Ozark Mountain UFO Conference, April 8th through the 10th, 2022, best western end of the Ozarks, Eureka Springs, Arkansas. And you can also pick up those DVDs and speakers and stuff afterwards. And basically, it's just a big, weird UFO thing. It's pretty interesting. Either way you want to look at it. Let's see. YouTube, UFO Paranormal Radio. That's the network, YouTube. And then also they have one, UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials. And then you can find us on UPN, RN, Twitch, or Twitter, iTunes, SoundCloud, or iHeart. We're waiting on Jay. He's having some tech issues. He'll show up. His cam wasn't working, so he'll be here eventually. But tonight's guest, looking forward to this, the return of Joe R. Lansdale. How you doing, Joe? Great to have you here.
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Can you hear anything weird on my background? I have an AC on. I just want to make sure it's not too loud.
I don't hear anything weird.
Okay, good. No, I don't want to turn it off, but if I gotta, it is Florida. I usually ask Jay, but I don't know what the hell's going on with that. He'll be here shortly. Tech stuff happens, that's for sure. But it's so great to have you back.
Thank you.
The last time you were on, it was a Hap And Leonard novel and a lot of Weird West. And this time we got you back for Born for Trouble, The Further Adventures of Hap And Leonard. So. Correct. I've been reading you since elementary school. I'm 47.
Oh, man.
And I know, right? Depressing, right? The Magic Wagon. I know you had that Batman kind of fiction book with the Scarecrow or something like that. Yeah. And then the big thing that got me into you more was the Jonah Hex series with Truman and all that. That's when I really was like, got a hankering and looked for more of your stuff. And then I've read a lot of the Hap And Leonard, and I love this newest Hap And Leonard. But I've been reading you for many moons. It's great to have you here.
You're the one.
And so what can you tell us about this Hap And Leonard?
Well, this one is a collection of, I guess you would call them novelettes, possibly novellas, depending on how liberal you are with what's a novella and what's a novelette. But they have never been collected before. They've been out there before in individual, anthologies and short novella books and things like that, but they've never been collected before. And this is one of them is a really short story, but the rest of them are novellas. But I think that's what makes it unique, is that it, and it covers that whole career that they've had where I've written novelettes and novellas in between other books. So it kind of covers some of their history. And there's a new introduction, and I think it's a really fun book. I'm proud of it.
Definitely really good. And it's just the way you have their language. It's just unique, and it stands out among other, compared to other writers. Just the way they
I hope so.
I like the way they talk.
Yeah, I like the way they talk too.
I'm from Georgia, so now I'm down in Florida. Mosquito land of death and gloom.
Yeah, but, East Texas is mosquito land too. It's much more tropical. It's got lots of trees and swamp. It's not like what people think of Texas.
Yeah, and I noticed on your site, Orbit Drive-Through. What is that? Is that something that really exists, or is that
Orbit
fiction land?
I wrote a novel called I wrote a novel called The Drive-In, and it takes place at the Orbit Drive-In. Okay. And that's where that came from. And it's named after that drive-in in my novel. That was back in the, I guess it was the late 80s, probably about 88 now that I think about it. But anyway, the Orbit was in that. And that's one of my more cultish books. I think it's one of my favorites. It's still in print, along with the two sequels that I wrote over the years. One of them, I think, was like 15, 16 years later, the last one that I wrote. And so that's where that comes from, the Orbit Drive-In.
Interesting, definitely. I'll have to look deeper into that. I have a lot of your books, so I'm not sure I have that one. What's the
Complete Drive-In. You just look it up, the Complete Drive-In, and it's there.
Okay. I love drive-ins, that's for sure. There's still some going around here that we may go to at some point up in Alabama, about 40 minutes away. There's one, surprisingly. Is there any in your area still?
No, not the immediate area. What they have done, though, is that they've done a few of these portable drive-in things where they'll have a pasture or some place where they'll put it up, just blow it up. That's what it is. It's, you blow it up like an air mattress, and they have a pump to blow it up, and it shows that works as the screen, and so they just showed the film on that. So that's about it, but it's not like a location where you go to. Those don't exist anymore, at least in this area.
Are you talking about like they did the weird COVID ones or something? I saw somewhere they're doing them at Walmart. Yeah. But they didn't do them here, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, they did them. They did them before COVID, but they did them during COVID a few times. Yeah. But it wasn't consistent. It wasn't all the time. When I grew up, drive-ins were everywhere. You go from one little city to the next, or one little town to the next, and they might have 2 or 3 drive-ins. Tyler, Texas, when I was a kid, and when it was 30, 40,000. I think it's about 100,000 now, but it had 3 drive-ins. There's only one of them that still exists, and it shows nothing but porno films. So at the time, it was a more mixed, it was not only movies that were made specifically for drive-ins, that some of which no longer exist because they were just filmed over. They just used the film. It wasn't like now where you've got, digital. And so some of those movies, well, if you didn't see them then, you'll never see them. But then they also showed what Joe Bob Briggs called hardtop films at the drive-ins as well, and they did these dusk to dawn things, and it was a unique time. It was very interesting. I'd probably get out there and think, hey, there's too many mosquitoes. I'm hot. I'd probably be different now than I was when I was a teenager in my early 20s. My wife and I used to go. I guess even in my 30s. My wife and I, we'd take the kids to drive in, because if you had little kids, you couldn't take them to an indoor theater. At least you shouldn't, because if they cried or whatever, you're interrupting or bothering other people. But drive-ins were pretty cool. I miss them, and I do miss that whole subculture that was more a part of them in the 60s and maybe the early 70s. Hang on a second. Somebody's coming. I'll cut it off here. Okay. So the 60s and the early 70s, it was a different sort of thing. A lot of people went, and you had families that went originally, and then gradually over time, they became what they call passion pits, where they just brought a lot of teenagers, to go in to maybe watch the movie and maybe not watch the movie. So it kind of morphed a little bit over time, but yeah, they were cool. I miss them.
For sure. Joe Bob Briggs. I didn't know they showed those at drive-ins. Cool. I know I've seen that on Shudder. They brought him back on there. I've seen some of them.
Yeah, well, all those movies that Joe Bob Briggs reviewed were drive-in movies. They weren't video movies. They were drive-in movies. And then as drive-ins begin to fade and videos begin to take their place, really, videos really took the place of drive-ins. Because now, instead of having to go out, if you want to go do something and you want to take your kids and you didn't want to bother other people when they were showing movies that you missed at the indoor theaters because your kids were young, they would run them out there and you would go, okay, I'll go. And then what happened when videos came along, you thought, well, I don't even have to go. I can just sit here in my underwear and watch it on television with the VHS. And so VHS were probably one of the, not the only, but one of the contributors to the decline of the drive-in.
Yeah, that's definitely misfortune. There's a few around here, but they're rare. They definitely have vanished, like extinct. I was surprised to see that there were still a few around, but they're like dinosaurs now for sure. No doubt about it. And Joe Bob Briggs and those kind of personalities always interest me a lot. That host those kind of movies. We have that. I always have trouble saying Spenguli, like his name when you see it doesn't. He's in this area. He comes on one of the channels here. That's the only one here that I know of. Yeah. And, of course, sure. Elvira. And there's a bunch of different ones I know. There's even some on YouTube that, have their own channels. And I guess that's where they do most of their work and stuff. But I always love that stuff. That's
when I was a kid, there was Evelyn out of Shreveport. And she was on Friday nights. And they would show old Universal films or Roger Corman films or all kinds of films. It was every Friday night, and Evelyn would come on, and introduced the movie. And then gradually, for whatever reason, the station decided they didn't want to do that. So she had a little period where she would come on and read a poem, and that was it. And then the next thing you know, she's not on at all, but she was called Evelyn. And I remember her. And then in the 70s, I think it was maybe the early 80s, they had Count Bubba, which was on out of Lufkin for a while. And the guy that played Count Bubba was actually a martial arts student of mine.
Cool.
Yeah.
Is that Bubba Hotep? Is that any reference to the name? Was that something that may have brought up the name?
Well, if you're from the South, Bubba is just a name kind of for brother. Bubba kind of had to do with, sometimes little kids couldn't say brother because they say Bubba. And so that just kind of became, everybody in the South, understood that term. And some people just, for whatever reason, acquired the nickname Bubba, or were actually named Bubba. And when I wrote Bubba Hotep, I just thought it would be funny if I'm going to put this in the South and in East Texas to make our hero, Elvis, but to make our villain, Hotep, also, since he's in East Texas, we'll call him Bubba Hotep. And so I had the title laying around long before I ever wrote the story. And one day I thought, I've got the story for the title now. So I wrote it.
And then, of course, Don Coscarelli, that's epic that he did it, the movie, from Phantasm and all that. I watched all those recently again, those Phantasms. They're haunting. They're weird, man. They're good.
They are weird. Yeah. The first one's still my favorite because it was so strange and it was so out of the box. And I saw it, at a drive-in. And then I saw it on video after that. And then, of course, I got to know Don, and I saw it at different, sort of like where they would show a number of his movies, including Bubba Hotep, and they would show, his early films as well. So kind of a Don Coscarelli perspective or retrospective. I'm not sure which.
Yeah, I got his biography. I need to read it. It's definitely on my list of books.
It's good. It's good. The best part is I'm in there.
Nice. That's always a plus for sure. And I know the show. I love the show, and I know they canceled it, which is what they do lately with so many good things. One of the things,
it was their most popular show. It was their highest rated, most popular show, and they canned it anyway.
They did that. They did that with Hannibal. That show was amazing, and it had the best reviews ever. But I guess people didn't watch it after 3 seasons, and they kill it. It's crazy.
Well, Sundance was a small channel, and so they may have weighed the expense against the popularity, for one thing. Yeah. But I think also they had new people who came in and took over, and that's just the standard way these things are done. Is that when somebody new comes in, they throw everything out before them, especially if it's popular. A lot of times because they didn't do it, they're not getting credit for it. And so that kind of killed it. But I wasn't surprised. I was surprised that we had 3 seasons just because I think it was such an unusual show. And, people loved it that saw it. And it's certainly popular. But I think maybe Sundance didn't quite get it, which strikes me as odd. Because I did hear that the guy that took over after the 3rd season, the word was he didn't get the show. I thought, what's to get? It's pretty obvious, but then it moved to Netflix, so you can still see the first 3 seasons on Netflix.
Yeah, and that's a similar thing they did with Hannibal. It's like good shows, and they just slice them. You almost don't even want to watch shows on certain networks.
They did it with Longmire. They're going to kill it. Longmire was on A&E. It was their most popular show, so they canceled it. And then they added a couple of seasons on Netflix, and then it was canceled there as well, and was still very popular. So it's hard to figure, and it bothers me if I start to watch a show. I'm reluctant until I know that everything is wrapped up. Even if they don't know whether they're going to have a next season. If they wrap it up enough and they don't have enough season, then I don't feel cheated. But I hate it when I get into a show and I watch it and I get to the end, they leave me on a cliffhanger. But what the hell? I hate that. They ought to at least have a wrap up show or two,
something. That's like the thing that happened at HBO with Deadwood and Rome and Carnival. something weird happened, like a murder, and like the exec wiped off all the R-rated programming. Some weird thing, like Deadwood was doing amazing. The guy was Ian McShane was winning like Golden Globes and stuff, and they canceled. He won some kind of award that was big, but they canceled that. And then years later, they're trying to, everybody's pissed off, and they do the 2-hour movie or whatever, which it was still good.
Well, they did a movie. I think they did do a movie.
They did.
I liked
the
first 2 seasons. I thought the third season was the second season redone.
Yeah,
I thought it had begun to wane myself. Yeah,
it's just weird when they scrap stuff. I'm watching Resident Alien now, and I really love it. I have the comics and stuff. It's funny, with that Alan Tudyk on Sci-Fi. It's really good. If you haven't seen it, it's funny. But you almost start watching stuff, and you're like, why am I doing this? Probably just kind of like pull the plug on it.
Yeah. We watched something that was completed, was Lupin, and it was 2 seasons, and it's a really good show. It's on Netflix, and it's Lupin, Lupin. And it's based on a character that was back in the early 1900s and was sort of the reverse of Sherlock Holmes. He was a thief, a gentleman thief, Arsène Lupin. And there was also another thief that was done out of England called Raffles, but this one was out of France. And he even has in the books, in one of the stories, he even meets a version of Sherlock Holmes called what is it? They call him Herlock Sholmes. And so it's just kind of a parody of that too. But that show's really good. It's very, very smart, and it somehow plays with that old series and comes across as new as well. You don't have to have read the old series. I happen to have read a number of the stories. I haven't read them all, but I recognize some of the things they were doing.
Cool. I found a picture of that show and saved it. I know when I talked to you last, I found out about lots of new stuff I'd never heard of. Six Gun, you told me about that comic. I got all those, the hardback things of them. So it's good to learn stuff. I saved a picture of that show so I can look it up and check it out.
It's really good. It builds and just gets better and better, and it's very, very clever. Very clever. Cool. And usually I get annoyed with all the flashbacks and the flash forwards and stuff like this, but this one does it in such a way that it's really comfortable and easy to follow, and actually makes it more interesting. I think that after Pulp Fiction, everybody started telling stories that way, but not all stories need to be told that way, and this one did. It was very good.
We're watching one called Severance. I think it's on Apple or something, but it's got John Turturro, Christopher Walken. It's by Ben Stiller. It's really good, but it's weird.
What a good cast.
Some weird splicing going on. I'm still trying to figure out what the hell's happened, but I'm like, there's Christopher Walken. That's cool. So I'm going to keep going. John Turturro, let's keep going.
Really.
So it's good.
I'm into historicals lately. I've been, I used to read a ton of historicals, and I still read some, but I've been watching things like The Last Kingdom, Valhalla.
That's good.
Vikings.
I saw both of them. I've seen them all. Both of those. Those are good.
Yeah, I didn't love this. I liked the first season of Vikings real well. After that, I kind of lost interest. But by the time the Valhalla, I think it was just 1 season or 2. I don't remember. I think 2. And I liked it. And then, but the one I really like is The Last Kingdom, which is based on a lot of, King Alfred and all that bunch. And it's fun. It's really good.
Bernard Cornwell. I'm caught up on that. I know a new season's about to come out. Valhalla had 8 episodes so far, just 1 season.
Okay, 8.
But it was good. The original Vikings got kind of drawn out, but Ragnar was the feat of that. The best part of it, kind of when he croaked, it was still okay to watch, but it's like Ragnar's gone.
The problem I had with that actor was good, I guess, but I never could tell if he was smiling, angry, or farting, or what. He always had that same look, kind of.
He does
that. And so I never could feel what the hell was going on with that, So I thought, I don't know. Our daughter did some promotion for that film at the Comic Con, and she was dressed as the Viking, one of the Shield maidens, because she looks like the lady that was the main lady in Vikings that played his wife, Ragnar's wife, and she looked somewhat like that. So they had her all dressed up, and she did that for, I think, a weekend or something.
For sure. And there's another weird one on HBO Max that we've been watching, Raised by Wolves. It's a sci-fi, and that Travis Fimmels.
I watched some of that. I don't know why I quit watching it. I didn't hate it.
It's actually pretty good. You should.
I didn't feel the love. I didn't feel the love.
Yeah, you might want to pick up on it. It's weird. It's definitely weird.
Yeah, I haven't given it up. It's on my list still to go back to.
Good. Well, we got Mr. J. McNicholas, Tech Issue Man here. He's back.
Yes. Mercury retrograde.
Is that happening? No, it's not. I don't think it is.
It's a good scapegoat.
Yeah, it's not happening currently, but things happen. We know it. So, would you want to ask Joe a question out of your deck of cards there?
Yeah, I definitely. So I just came back from Walmart and I left it upstairs. I just bought the whole season of the original Batman 1966 TV series, and with the new movie just coming out, and you haven't done some stuff. I didn't realize this till I looked up your bio that you did the animated series, which I love.
Yep.
Kevin Conroy did the voice for Batman, and Mark Hamill.
My favorite Batman.
Huh?
It's my favorite.
You said your favorite? Yeah, me too. I have to agree. I love that. But with the new Batman coming out, what's your take on the Batman films? So I always get these stupid questions. People are like, "Oh, who's the best Joker?" Hands down, Cesar Romero. Who's the best Joker voice? Hands down, Mark Hamill. But you got four guys now playing Batman, and I kind of liked the most recent one on the Justice Society, played by Ben Affleck. Everyone was like worried he was going to screw it up, but so the first series is The Dark Knight with his name escapes me, but the first three is the Dark Knight series, but he doesn't let anyone die. And in the first few books, he kills like 7 people over the course of his original Dark Knight times. And then they have the new ones with Christian Bale, and he lets people die. So who do you like better of the live action Batman?
Well, like I said, my favorite's the animated version. I think that captures everything about Batman better than anything, and I'm serious about that. I always found the old Batman series with Cesar Romero as the Joker and all that a little too silly for me. Yeah. But when I was a kid, though, I was such a Batman fan. I was disappointed when it came on because I wanted a serious Batman. I was already imagining the Batman they made later before it happened. But what's strange is when I thought about it, I went and looked back at my comics I was reading. I thought, damn, this is literal. It didn't seem silly to me in the comics, but what they're doing is literally putting those comics of the 50s and 60s, early, middle 60s and all that. The later comics started following the show and became even sillier, But for me, I like that show for what it is, but I never loved that show. I liked Michael Keaton, but I think Christian Bale's the best Batman so far because he captures most of the Batman feel that I have from reading Batman as it evolved in the 80s, But the truth is that they're all interesting. I think I'm like you. My favorite Batman is Ben Affleck, but he was in the worst Batman movies. So you never really got to see him be Batman in the way I wanted to, because he was terrific. I think he was highly underrated. I would love to have seen him in somebody else writing something else for him that was more like, the previous Batman movies. I think that he was underused and poorly used. And I would love, and he never really got to just be a Batman movie. And I think that's a real shame because he was perfect. He looked right, and I think everything about him was just perfect for him.
I thought he was pretty good too. And the problem with it is at his age, he's a little younger than me, but they were pushing him towards the end of his career, almost to the point of like the Batman Beyond cartoon series, where Batman is elderly and he's got that big Great Dane dog, and then the kid steals his costume and becomes the new Batman, which is also a really good series.
I love that series. At one point, I was approached to write for it, and I couldn't because I was working on something else. Same way with Justice League Unlimited. I was asked to see if I wanted to do those. I maybe present something or whatever, and I had to pass both times because I didn't even have time to entertain it. Even if they'd come to me and said, "You're in right now," like they did the first one, I still couldn't have done it. I think I was working on a novel and a screenplay and comics, and I was really up to my neck and stuff. But I love all that stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't seem you take a rest because I was looking at. I was going to try to write down your bibliography on this page so I'd have something to look at. And then I called it up on the Wikipedia, and you have an entire page of just your novels and short stories and comic everything. So it's huge. So you must not ever take a break. But if you had your choice to write anything, whether it's Star Trek, Star Wars, comic, cartoon, whatever, if you could write any huge major franchise, what would you pick?
I think I've already done it. I did Batman for the animated series, you know. I mean, you know, something else came along, it'd be interesting. I'd probably want to do more Batman, you know, but I really prefer doing my stuff. You know, I've doing other people's stuff is fun, but to me, I don't want to make a career of it. There are friends of mine that have, and they're perfectly happy doing that. But I'm sort of, you know, my own guy. I do what I want to do. I've done Tarzan. I've done John Carter of Mars. I did a short story, John Carter of Mars. I did there was a Burroughs novel that he died before he finished, and it laid around for 50 years, and they came to me, and I got to finish it, and I got to revise it and finish it, and then I wrote a Tarzan novella, and it may well be that I may write 3 more to become a book. I've been approached about that, but again, time is my enemy. And I did a John Carter of Mars short story. I think probably if I were going to do something else, if I could get paid for my time, you know, I think Burroughs would be the thing I would most be interested in doing outside. And after that, probably Batman, maybe go back to Jonah Hex. But I feel like I had a really good, you know, Jonah Hex. Yeah, you know, I don't know that I did the Lone Ranger. I did Conan. You know, I've done
more
a
Weird
lot
West. More Weird West. Put a request in for more Weird West.
I just had a Weird West come out. I had a chapbook called The Hungry Snow come out, and it's sold
what is
out.
It called? What is it called again?
The Hungry Snow.
Good
luck finding it.
My luck. I'll look.
But they will be collected in a short story collection coming out.
Cool.
Or it will be collected with other stories. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff out there that I mean, I'm not a writer, but I went to school for videography, so I know how to write scripts and screenplays. And just for poop and giggles, I started writing a live action treatise for the Thundercats, which when I had the camera problems, you saw the symbol on my camera there. And I'm probably about 45 minutes into it for a 2-hour movie. So, but I haven't touched it in years. But I like the whole idea of backstory. So when you do something for your own purposes, like your Hap and Leonard, how much backstory did you write before you started the novels, or is backstory you did after, or not at all?
I don't outline at all. I just start writing them, and I get up every morning and I write for 3. I only work about 3 hours a day, and that's been my method for 25, 30 years. And I get up, write about 3 hours a day. I have no idea what's going to happen next. I go to sleep. I get up in the morning, and my subconscious has worked it out. I go in and write, and then I know when I'm done. I try to write no less than 3 to 5 pages a day, but I generally get that without too much effort. And I'll sometimes get 10, 15 pages a day. Sometimes, you know, if I have enough great days throughout, it you know, speeds up the process. And I do one draft that I revise as I go. And then once I get that finished, I do a polish, which is not a complete draft, because I found I don't get better by doing multiple drafts. I get worse. And I get diminishing returns if I work past 3 hours, because I start out hot. You know, I think George Martin and I were talking about this once. He kind of builds into, I don't think he likes to write. I don't think he's, you know, I think he has to really gear into doing it. Saying he doesn't like it's for the wrong term, but I mean, I think he finds having written maybe more interesting than writing. I know a number of writers like that, but I actually enjoy writing and having written. I love the whole thing. You know, I started out when I was 4 trying to write comic books and draw them. I wasn't thinking of a career. I was just trying to write stories. I just wanted to tell stories, and I never quit. And so by the time I was 21, I was selling nonfiction. And by the time I was in my late 20s or probably more like my middle 20s, I was selling fiction. And then by the time I was 29, I was full time, and have been ever since. You know, my wife worked another job until 88, and then she went to work for me until she retired a few years ago. And now I've got things set up. I've got accountants. My daughter works for me some. I've got other things going on as far as the business goes. I've got agents. I've got not only literary agents, but film agents. And that kind of thing. So it's a different deal than what I was doing then. But I always feel great that I sold when I was 21, and I worked other jobs until 29, and I went full time, and I've been there ever since. And I'm 70 years old now.
And you're also the resident writer at Stephen F. Austin University. What exactly does that mean? Are you a teacher, or are you?
Well, I'm writer. Yeah, I'm writer in residence, and that meant I used to teach there a lot. Right now, though, I haven't taught in quite a few years, but I taught for 8 or 9 years, and I would come in and do one class per semester, and I was doing spring, fall semester. Sometimes I would do summer. Sometimes when I had to go to Italy or Germany or travel for other things, they would give me that time off, because since I taught once a week, if I was gone 2 weeks, I didn't miss but 2 classes, and those were taught by somebody else. I would say, this is what we're doing. But I did that for 8 or 9 years as an adjunct. But I taught graduate courses. I taught somewhat lower level courses. I liked it, I didn't mind doing it, but I just felt like I didn't want to keep dividing myself. I used to do lectures. I used to do readings. I did all this stuff, and still do from time to time. And I still teach martial arts.
Yeah, I was going to get into that too. That's something I'm into.
Yeah. I always felt like, when you're going to ask somebody to do something, you always ask a busy person. They're the people who know how to get things done, not the person that's got all the time on their hands. There's a reason they've got all that time on their hands. They're not doing anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So I got a funny story for you. Then I got a question after that. But so I went to high school in Montgomery County, Maryland, and I'm a math retard. I have extreme dyslexia. So I misplace letters, I misplace words, I misplace concepts and ideas, and I jumble up numbers and figures. So I go to algebra. Well, they did it in 2 parts. So algebra 1 part 1, algebra 1 part 2, and algebra 2 part 1 part 2 in our high school. And I get this teacher, and she gives me the book that's the teacher's book. So in the back, I have all the answers to all the work. And I'm like, I wonder if this is a mistake. And I come to find out she went to John Carroll University to learn her math teaching degree, and she was taught math by my father. So it was really and I'm like, wow, okay, so that's where the favor comes from. So I'm looking you up. I saw that your daughter went to Stephen F. Austin University too. So did she come into your class as well?
No, she only went a little bit. I think she and I are the dropouts. Okay. My wife and my son, they're the ones that have degrees. My wife has a degree in criminology, sociology, and my son has a degree in journalism and philosophy. He's also a writer. He's had 2 movies made. He's written a lot of comics, a whole lot. And he's written a short story, and he and I did a novel together. My daughter and I have done stories. She's a professional singer, but during COVID, she became the head of PR for Tachyon Books. And so, she's got a lot of stuff. She did some modeling. She did commercials on TV. She was in Westworld as the body double for Evan Rachel Wood. Okay. Sometimes you think you're seeing her, you're seeing Casey, but it kind of runs in our family, I guess, that we're all doing this kind of thing. But so in that way we're connected. But maybe I used to teach my son and daughter martial arts when they were young. I did do that.
That's cool. Yeah, that's something I'm into too. So what martial arts is it that you teach? And I'm sure I'm going to botch the word. You're in several martial arts Hall of Fames, and you have the title, which loosely translates to roughly badly translates to Grand Master. It's a Japanese word, and I know I'm not going to say it right.
Well, there's Soki, in Japan, Japanese, but our art, I founded an art called Shinchuan back in 1996, which is in the United States Martial Arts Hall of Fame, and I'm in there for Shinchuan. But so it's a ballad art. I always kept it small. I wasn't trying to make the McDonald's of martial arts. I was doing a small group. I have black belts that I've taught. Some of them are teaching, but that's the art I do is Shinchuan. Before that, I studied things like Kempo, Hapkido, Thai boxing, kickboxing. I did pure boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, Aikido, Aikido. I mean, Thai boxing. My body's roughed up.
Yeah, yeah. They're not easy on the body. I've got essentially the green belt in Taekwondo, and I taught myself how to.
I have that too.
Yeah,
I have a second degree in Taekwondo.
That's one of my favorites, and I taught myself how to use the nunchaku, and I taught that at the school I was at back when I was 17. So it's something that near and dear that I'd love to get back into, but I just right now I don't have the time. I'm working full time, so when I'm off, I'm recovering from work.
Well, at 70, I was being thrown and all that sort of stuff up until just recent, and I decided, well, if I'm going to keep doing this, I'm just going to have to become the teacher. And so I used to also, be the uke. I would be the guy that gets thrown. We'd take turns, and I'd let my students throw me. I don't now. And I figured that I've got maybe 5 more years. I figure I can do this till I'm 75. My students think I can do it till I die at 90, but I think they're being optimistic because I go in and I work with them and I'm still able to do it. But there'll come a day when, I won't be.
Yeah.
And I can still keep writing, as long as my brain works, I can keep writing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. But with the martial arts, it takes a toll on you. And the teacher that I started with, it was a McDonald's of martial arts schools. It was a Junri karate school or Taekwondo school here in Maryland.
I know the Junri stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and eventually the school went to the American Karate Center, but I got to actually meet Junri. And the fascinating thing about this man, he was probably in his 90s when I met him. Really tiny guy, and he holds the world record for standing jump kick. And when you do a standing jump kick, they measure from your lowest part of your body, which is your knee, 6 feet tall. And then they did it for running, jumping sidekick, and he was like 13 feet. So he can jump clear over the horse and the rider on the horse and clear into the guy next to him. So amazing gentleman.
I've seen a number of just amazing people. I was pretty good at Taekwondo, but I didn't like Taekwondo as much. I tended to like more combat, and I tended to like more, we were doing mixed martial arts before that existed. There was no mixed martial arts. And nobody was paying you any money for it, for damn sure, But we just started doing that. We'd have a thing. Okay, as long as you don't put his eye out, go.
Right.
And so we did a lot of that, and I'm glad I did. I mean, I think martial arts gave me most everything I have, including writing. Writing is my major love, and it was my first love. But martial arts gave me the confidence and the focus. And there's so many things in martial arts that you do that fit life. When you talk about balance, you're talking about balance of keeping your body balanced, upsetting their balance, whatever, but you're also talking about balance in your life. Mm-hmm. And I really believe those things. And there's a whole bunch of it. I hope to write a book on that before I finally, hang it up. But I really believe that and I'm not talking about just, your weekend warrior or the guy that goes to the, the strip mall. I'm talking about real deep study of martial arts that goes beyond the self-defense and gets into the philosophy of it. And by that, I don't even necessarily mean Buddhism or Zen, but the understanding of the connection between martial arts and how you think in life, how you live in life. It's important. It really is.
Yeah, there's a lot of philosophies behind different types of styles. You mentioned Aikido, which is one that I'd like to learn, and I'd like to learn Wing Chun, but Aikido, just the moves in that it's not like capoeira where it's an actual dance, but I call it the push me pull you martial art. So if a guy's trying to push you, you pull him and use his weight and momentum against him. If he's pulling you, you push. So I would love to learn that because it's just the way.
That's also true though with jiu-jitsu and a lot of other arts. Yeah,
sorry,
a lot of them are push pull art. I said that's also true of jiu-jitsu and a lot of other. Aikido, I don't think is very practical for self-defense, but it is an extraordinarily interesting and balletic form. But it's overly cooperative if you're looking for self-defense. But if you're looking for something else, if you have another art mixed with it, because I was able to take a lot of concepts from Aikido and develop, a better martial art for understanding how balance works. But we do much smaller circles and smaller moves because You may not have that kind of space. That's another thing. And we don't have people just doing a big committed attack. You have somebody trying to snap punches at you. You better be able to, parry punches or get inside and know a little bit about boxing. Boxing is a martial art. It's an underrated martial art. Mm-hmm. And so I love it all. I don't want to get too much on that because I talk too much about it.
Yeah, I hear you. I totally agree. It's one of my favorite things of all time. So I'm going to throw it back to Jeff and let him have a few questions in here.
Hey, I was just on here looking through some comics on eBay because I was looking for those, some of the ones that you've done, but I didn't realize you did a Conan comic with Tim Truman. I need to get into that at some point. That's pretty awesome. That's neat. Yeah. His artwork
I also with your did writing Pigeons from amazing. Hell.
Pigeons from Hell?
Pigeons from Hell, also based on Robert E. Howard's story. And what I did was a sequel to it. A lot of people thought I was doing an adaptation, but I was really doing a sequel that had similar beats, because I felt like it would repeat itself to some extent if you went to that house. And so that was fun, too.
And then Dead in the West.
And I did X-Files. My son and I did 2 X-Files comics.
Okay, cool. Was Dead in the West by Truman, too? He did the art on those, too, didn't he? Dead in the West.
No, he didn't do Dead in the West. Jack Jackson did the Dead in the West. He was an underground artist who did a lot of, underground comics. They were not mainstream comics, but he started doing other kinds of things. He did historical comics and stuff of that nature, and he ended up being the artist on Dead in the West.
Cool.
Now Truman did like Jonah Hex, and we did the Lone Ranger, and a number of other things. And he also adapted some of my things that I didn't write. He adapted my story On the Far Side of the Cadillac Desert with Dead Folks, and so we have a strong connection just as friends, but also as co-workers.
Cool. Is he still doing comics now? Is he still? I haven't seen anything in a while. Maybe I'm just missing it.
No, he's doing stuff. He also does stuff with games and different stuff of that nature. He also wrote a large number of Conan comics. He wrote a lot of the Dark Horse run on Conan.
Cool. I'll have to dig deeper for sure. No doubt about it. So, what have you been into lately as far as comics or books? I like to learn new stuff, titles and stuff that I may not have heard of from you. What have you been into lately?
Well, I read comics, but I tend to be very selective in comics. And the last thing I tried was the Batman's Grave, which was a little too clever for me. It was beautiful. Gil Kane, I'm not Gil Kane, but I'm reading a Gil Kane Atom thing called the Sword of the Atom, I think, or the Atom Sword. I forget which it is, but it's very much like an Edgar Rice Burroughs adventure. And it's he's in a miniature world, and he's dealing with a miniature society, and it has a lot of sword fights and stuff like that. It's great fun. I started it last night, and I'm about half through. It's all the collected, stories. Sword of the Atom, I think is what it's called.
And it's a comic.
And it's an older comic. It's an older comic, but I just now discovered it, and I bought the collected version of it. I came across one of the issues and looked at it and thought, I want to read this. So I got it. But what I really love to read are the old collected DC comics. I'm very much more of a DC comic person than a Marvel. And so I like the old because they're kind of nostalgic and fun. And I like the sort of simplicity of them. And then I pick modern things when I've felt like they're going to be collected. I don't try to read all these individual issues anymore because they just go on forever. And then it's like you were talking about like Netflix. After a little while, I thought, for God's sakes, when's this going to end, or is it going to end hanging? So I wait till they're collected, and then if something, strikes me, then I get it. Yeah.
A graphic novel. And do you have a lot of comics? Do you like issues?
Yeah, I do. I have quite a few. I don't have as many as I once did. I got rid of a lot of them. I sold some. I gave some away. I gave a ton away to some kids and different things like that. But I have the ones I care about. I like I have the old Tarzan, comics, and from a variety of different publishers, DC, Marvel, and then the old collected newspaper strips and things like that. I have a lot of the old Batman, Superman, a lot of, like I said a while ago, a lot of the DC, comics collected together, several volumes of Batman or the Flash or what have you that I like. And I have a few of the Marvel. It's not that I'm anti-Marvel, but I just don't collect them the same. When I was a kid, I read all those Marvel comics when they first came out. And that's creepy to think about, but I read the first Spider-Man, the first X-Man, first Iron Man, first Thor, all that, had them all. The usual story, your mom gets rid of your comics and now they're worth money.
Yeah, that's what happens for sure.
As far as reading, I'm actually reading a book called Blood and Treasure. It's about, it's a nonfiction book on Daniel Boone and about about the settling of the frontier and the Native Americans, how they were affected. It's fantastic. It's really,
Treasure.
Really good.
I'll look that up. And check it out for sure.
Yeah, and before that, I read reread a book by Elmore Leonard called City Primeval: High Noon in Detroit City, which is, I've read it a couple of times. I like it. And what was before that? I've got several things on my nightstand, to read. I read a Robert Parker novel that was really not Robert Parker anymore. It was Robert Parker Spencer, written by Ace Atkins. I read a volume of old Victorian horror and ghost stories, and I mean, I'm all over the place. I don't have the feeling that I've got to read one particular thing. I get bored if I'm reading all the same things, and I never understood how somebody can just read one thing. And because I can find the patterns in them pretty quick. But if I veer away from it and then I come back, it's fun again. And I read a lot of just straight mainstream or literary stuff, and I've written for literary magazines. I've written for pulp style things, whatever hits me in that mood, because it's all the same. You can either tell a story or you can't. And you tell stories in different ways and in different manners. And, when I was growing up, science fiction and fantasy and horror, that was my stuff. And I still love it, but I don't read nearly as much of it as I once did. My favorite science fiction writer was Philip Jose Farmer. I love Farmer, dearly. And I read all kinds of mystery. Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett, the usual suspects, James Cain, all that bunch. I could go on. I could give you a list forever in science fiction. Henry Kuttner, Cyril Kornbluth, people that a lot of writers that people don't know about now, that were major writers in their time and influenced and changed the field and still hold up. Robert Silverberg, who he and I email each other a little bit. Yeah, he's in his 80s now, but he wrote. Nobody really knows how many books he wrote and stories. I don't think he knows. But he wrote some great stuff. He transformed science fiction in the late 60s, early 70s, somewhere in there. He, along with Harlan Ellison and Philip K. Dick and some of those writers, changed the field. They made it an adult field. Before that, it was really designed for juveniles, for the most part anyway. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't designed for juveniles, they didn't call it science fiction. On the Beach, with Neville Shute wrote, which is about an after the bomb situation, is really, not considered science fiction. It wasn't when it was written. Now it is, because science fiction has broadened its scope and its understanding, and people realize now, because something's good doesn't mean that it has to be not science fiction, not genre, that it can be both. And those are the kind of things that I really enjoy, and I love reading a lot of the Sherlock Holmes. I read one called Sherlock Holmes and Dracula, where Dracula hires Sherlock Holmes. Well, I love that. It was great fun.
Check that out. That sounds good.
I've got a big mixture of stuff. Yeah.
You ever get into any weird UFO stuff? We do real serious shows on that subject. Do you ever read?
Well, I wrote a book that's coming out that's dealing with a flying saucer cult. It's called the Donut Legion, and it comes out in March.
Okay,
I'll
write that down.
Not this March, but a year from now.
The Donut Legion.
And I read a book on. I'm a non-believer, by the way. I believe that there are probably life out there, but I've never seen anything make me think aliens visit this. I generally find it not very convincing. Like ghosts, I don't believe in ghosts.
A lot of it could be government stuff. It's just hard to tell. The drones and all kinds.
Well, who knows? But but I read a book on these cults, about flying saucer cults and religions. You've had several of those things. I mean, and a lot of things that Scientology has a lot of science fictional elements in it, including aliens and things
Heaven's
of that
Gate,
nature.
That was a trip out for sure.
Well, there's the Mormons. I mean, a lot of that stuff, and that's interesting to me because I think all religions are a cult in one form or another. Some are more cultish than others. Some are more, or maybe worse than others. But to me, all religion is a cult.
And I often use this quote all the time that religion is an invention of man to control the minds and hearts and actions of other men. And you tell that to the wrong person, they're like, "Oh no, God, religion is invented by God."
Right. Religion's about power.
The conversation.
Religion's about power and money, and it can have positive effects and it can have negative effects. But in general, I believe we'd be better off without it. I don't have any trouble not believing. I don't understand. People say, well, how can you believe there was nothing? And I said, well, how can I believe there was a supernatural God? I'm much more interested in the Big Bang. Do I understand it all? No, but nobody does. But nobody understands the idea that there's been a continuous, universal, supernatural character called God, whichever religion or God.
There's very little room for argumentation or discussion. They're especially hardcore religious people they're quick to believe in a fictional, non-existent being, but when you try to talk to them about aliens, then you're a non-believer. But mathematically speaking, it's impossible that this is the only planet in this galaxy.
Well, there's a difference in saying what I said actually was that I believe that there is probably life out there.
Yeah, they haven't visited here.
Nothing has convinced me that they visited us.
Right.
Well, that's a different subject. And even if there's life out there, they may not be anything like us, and it may not even be anything more than bacteria. On the other hand, it might be totally something different. There may be versions of us out there. If you get into quantum physics, you're talking about all these pocket universes and multiple universes. But again, quantum physics is theory. People always act like that. Oh, it's quantum physics. It's theory. It's nothing more. Doesn't mean it's wrong, but it doesn't mean it's right. And my belief is that I don't believe that we're seeing flying saucers and aliens are riding around in them. I think there are things that we don't understand, but that doesn't, when people see something in the sky and call it a UFO, that's correct. But as soon as you go the next thing and say it's aliens, you don't know that, and people, I had one land in my front yard. Well, until he lands in my front yard, or you got, video of him and it doesn't look like a guy wearing aluminum foil, then I'm not interested. I just find it, I used to be fascinated with it. Same thing like Bigfoot. There is no Bigfoot. I went on Bigfoot, expeditions with people. And it's just, when you get really down to it, you realize that nothing of that nature, of that size, that can have a continuous population could exist. And if it does, I'll be the first one to go, damn, that's cool. But they've been trying to find them for years and years, and nobody ever finds one.
Well, I was going to bring that up next anyway, because I noticed also looking into you that your daughter had one of her songs featured on the show Finding Bigfoot. I've seen one like up close. I mean, like within 10 feet.
And I don't doubt you think you have, but I'm going to have more than that. It's not a matter of not believing you. One of the things I had one time was when my wife and I were first married. And this was probably 74. We got married in 73, probably 74. We raised goats. We had a goat dairy. And you had to get up damn early in the morning and go out and milk those goats. So we got up early one morning and we went out, and just starting to be light, and a giant silver triangle flew right over us. And I was in awe. I couldn't believe it. And then the light shifted and it was a bunch of insects. But had I not... But had that moved on just a little quicker, I would be telling you right now, I saw a flying saucer. Nobody can tell me different. And I went on Bigfoot expeditions, and people would say, well, yeah, you hear that? That's a Bigfoot. It's a possum. I grew up in the woods. It's a possum. I can hear it. I know its sound. I know what it is. And I think people have seen things they think. But I also think there's this. This is one of the fascinating things, is that I was reading some research on this, and I don't know how validated it is or anything. But I liked it. And it says, how the eye sends a message to the brain. I saw this. But sometimes they've discovered the brain sends a message to the eye, which they think may explain a lot of ghosts and sightings and things, because it's just as real, because your eye is seeing in the same way that I'm looking at you right now. But it's not coming from here.
Absolutely.
It's coming from, And so the brain itself is a remarkably weird thing. Now, is there Bigfoot out there? Might be. But I'm just saying apocryphal stories aren't going to get it. Even coming from my best buddies. If my mom said I saw a Bigfoot, I go, where? Where is it? To me, apocryphal stories may be sincere, but they're not proof. And that's what we're talking about, is proof. And if somebody finds one, but look how long they've looked. East Texas is supposed to be covered with them, but East Texas has lots of woods, but it's broken up. And I won't accept any supernatural beliefs for Bigfoot. As soon as you start that, I'm done. Yeah. But the idea that we have Gigantopithecus, is that what it was?
Gigantopithecus or Australopithecus?
There you go. Yeah. Australopithecus was smaller. They were not. There was Australoafricanus. There was different ones. I was an anthropology major when I was in school before I just quit. But the thing is that it doesn't matter how long people discuss theories and things like that. Until you have one, you've got nothing. And I had the body, and yet it's disappeared. Somebody stole it. Mm-hmm. And my daughter was on finding Bigfoot. She's not a Bigfoot believer either, but she had a great time. They asked me to be on it once, and I said, "No, man, I'll pass." But they had her on it, and she loved it. She loved those guys, and some of them were sincere. Some of the producers were probably no more a bigger believer than I am. They didn't necessarily believe in it, but she really enjoyed her time on there, and it was fun seeing her on there singing to Bigfoot in the woods. But there's things I want to believe, but there aren't things that I've been convinced to believe. I started out believing all stuff.
Bigfoot is a caveman ghost.
Well,
a caveman ghost.
Until we get one, we won't know for sure. But I don't know if you're familiar with the rods. There was all these videos coming out in the 90s and 2000s of these rods. And I am. I learned how to use video cameras. I know how they record imagery. And everyone's like, "Oh, they're rods. They're real. They're not. It's an insect." Now, the way video is collected, you have,
it makes a streak.
Right. If you got two fields, if you got
I've filmed numbers,
it just elongates the bug. So it looks like that bug now has 4, 6, 8, 12 wings and is 5 inches long, 12 inches long, a foot long. But people still believe it. They say this is hardcore evidence, and it's not. So
I want to believe all that stuff. I want to believe in Bigfoot. I want to believe in flying saucers. I mean, I'm not one of those guys that just doesn't want to believe. I want to believe, but I can't find any evidence that's convincing to me. And it's always somebody saw it or I saw it, but where's the evidence? I have one of my cousins is a big Bigfoot hunter. He's Jim Lansdale. He's part of the Louisiana, East Texas group that, he had a show on TV too called Killing Bigfoot.
I remember
people would say, "Oh my God, he's going to kill Bigfoot. That's terrible." And I thought, no, he's not going to kill Bigfoot because there isn't one. And they're not going to find Bigfoot either. They did 11, 12 seasons. And all you got's apocryphal stories. And did you hear that? And so I just got to have more than that,
Yeah,
it's like religion. It's faith. Some people have faith, and I don't have faith. I got to have more than that. I got to have proof.
One thing I'm kind of curious, and we can talk more about books and stuff, is just what's going on right now in the world. And I know they just stripped Putin of his black belt, which I'm seeing all this stuff in some of the right-wing news, and I'm not on either side. I was for Bernie. And but I mean, to be for our government on any level, even through a politician, it's like kind of being for Ted Bundy at this point, is the way it feels like to me. But as far as what's going on right now, it's terrifying. And, the big thing that's really bothering me is I see in some of the right-wing news outlets, they're trying to make Putin like he's a hero or something, like he's battling deep state in Ukraine, and they're like trying to prop him up like Hitler or something. But I know I saw the black belt thing about them stripping him of that. But I mean, it's definitely.
Well, they stripped him of an honorary Taekwondo black belt. I think he has a black belt in judo that's real, and then he had an honorary one. I don't like politics, but I think you do have to take a side. And what I think of is that, I don't like a lot of things about either side, but I like the Ukrainians because of their situation better than I like this giant, superpower that's coming in and saying, I'm going to take your spot. I don't like that, because what it reminds me of is back in World War II, they had, when Hitler came along, he took Czechoslovakia and Poland, and everybody kept waiting. We're just not going to do it. We're not going to be for these people, because we're not going to be for war, which I'm opposed to too. I was a Vietnam War resistor and nearly went to prison, and I was willing to go to prison. By quirk of fate, I did not have to go. But I do believe that there are exceptions. I think most of the time we're wrong. Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, all wrong. But this is not our war, but I understand, but it could be. And so I don't want us to send troops in there or anything at this point. And I hope we don't ever do that or have to. But if we hadn't had Churchill saying, you know what, we've got to not make agreements with these people, because every time they make an agreement, they don't stick to it. They just keep coming. It's sort of like you give a bully an inch, he'll take a mile. And the idea that you don't do it and that that's going to make you safe or prevent war doesn't seem to fit, because it's them causing the war. I hope to hell they can find a way to balance it out and convince people to, to chill. That's what I want.
Yeah.
But I am a big believer that sometimes you do have to stand up for things, if you don't. When people give peace a chance, I'm for it. But man, that's just a slogan. It's scary. Yeah. These people, they don't give a damn about give peace a chance. You think Putin gets up in the morning and goes, give peace a chance, man? He doesn't. No. That doesn't mean
it's creepy, because if you help on any level, it could cause nuclear holocaust. That's kind of the creepy part about it.
But also there are several NATO countries. There are also, the other scary thing is several NATO countries around Ukraine. If they invade, we have no choice. If they invade one of those NATO countries, Poland, for example,
you take one,
by NATO articles of action, we have to go in. So,
we're doing the right thing right now, and that's all the sanctions, and all the other countries are doing it, and that may well solve our problem. I think what Putin's really looking for is a way to save face now. I think he's screwed up, and he's going to try to take as much property as he can, then kind of make some kind of deal, but maintain that property that he took. And it's tricky. And it's sort of like if people were camping on the doorstep of America and say, we're going to come in and start shooting people. I think people on both sides, people like me that are, don't like the idea of war. And I'm not a right winger. I tend to be mostly a progressive. I voted for Bernie and I voted for Biden, and I'd vote for Biden again. I'd vote for Kamala Harris. I would vote for anybody that isn't Trump or isn't crazy, because you have to have government, like it or not. Anti-government gets you nowhere, even when government sucks, which it does. It's worked for a long time, and we've let it get out of hand, and it's gone bad. People like Trump, there's no accountability anymore, and you have people that only want to be reelected, and they want to raise money for their reelection. It's weird, because I've never seen it like this, and I've seen it bad a few times, but never anything like this in my lifetime.
Well, the other thing is, whether you like Trump or not, Putin was afraid of him. Putin wouldn't have done this if Trump was still around, and so he's.
No, I don't agree with that at all.
I
think it's just the opposite. He and Trump. Trump was practically was giving him love kisses. Trump was always like, "Oh, Putin's great." He even said it recently when they invaded Ukraine. He tried to kind of backstep a little bit, but he wasn't afraid. Putin wanted Trump in. He wasn't afraid of him. He was afraid of people like Biden, not because they're going to go out and start a war, but because they're not on his side. And a number of the Republicans, I think have come across in the right way, although most of them of recent haven't come across in a very good way, but I do believe that Trump was his buddy, or wanted to be. Trump wants to be that guy. That's who he wants to be. He wants to be the guy that runs a country and stays president forever. I mean, he lost the election in such an obvious way that it's just so embarrassing that there's new material too, where Trump himself knows he lost, but he just couldn't give it up. And the guy says one thing in one sentence and another thing in another sentence, and nobody seems to notice that he's within 30 seconds, he's not even continuing with saying the same thing. It's embarrassing to me. And I don't even, I don't agree with everything with Biden by any means. I don't agree with everything with Bernie or anybody. I think you're an idiot if you think one person has all the answers consistently, or that you only vote for a politician that believes everything you believe. I tend to be liberal, but I vote to the center because if you're completely left or right, there's no negotiation because you won't give up. I'm this guy or I'm this guy. But if you're in the center, you can at least negotiate a little bit to the left and the right. Socially, I'm way left, but I'm more of a moderate fiscally, and I believe that you got to have that moderation to get anything done.
Yeah, the owner of the show.
It's a real different side of that, man.
I got a funny story that happened the last time Joe was on. This lady's not on the network anymore. Her name was Eileen Pisano. She was in the chat, and Joe had said something about socialism, and she goes, "I'd rather listen to a one-bladed ceiling fan." Then I said something rude to her, and this Christian lady is a voodoo lady in New Orleans, and she threatened to do a baby doll conjuring on me because I said something about my fart box to her. But it was just, she's like, I'd rather listen to a one-bladed ceiling fan.
Nothing ever changed anything
funny.
In my life.
I was like, you're a Christian, you're going to baby doll conjuring me? I'm confused. Yeah, I know there's Catholic stuff in voodoo.
And what you said about being middle Joe is really good.
Yeah. What was the article, Joe?
What's that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
You said you wrote an article?
Jay. Oh, I'm just going to say I wrote an article, Miracles Ain't What They Used to Be. It really pissed a lot of people off, but I can live with that, because generally, I have people on both sides of the fence that are buddies of mine or good friends of mine. It's the only people I can't deal with are the far left or the far right, because if you go far enough in either direction, you're the same people. You meet in the back and you know all the answers and you don't give anybody any room. And you just listen, you say, I'm a Republican, and that's all I'm going to listen to is a Republican. I'm a liberal. All I'm going to watch is MSNBC. All I'm going to watch is Fox News or what have you. And to me, that doesn't work. You got to have something better than that. And we're not having it. I'm not seeing it. It's getting better, though. I've sort of noticed lately that there tends to be, I think people have Trump fatigue. And I think that's a good thing.
But what you said about being in the Central is absolutely right, spot on. But Joe that owns the station, he has a show called The Centralist where he talks about stuff and he's in the middle. But he says we should have a third party. You got the left, you got the right, and you got the middle. We have a three-party government. You have the legislative branch checks the judicial branch, checks the executive branch, and if one can't do something without the other's approval. So if we had that same thing with our political parties, the left and the right and the middle, I think we'd have a little bit better choices for our governing bodies, our gogoverning,
Right. I do too. Well, we got more parties than two, but we only have two that are significant.
Two official,
What we need is a third. I've always thought we need a common sense party, It's like on social issues. I mean, I don't care if you're gay. I don't care if you're black. I don't care, a female, whatever. I'm all for people being themselves and being who they are. And there shouldn't be restrictions for that. For me, like I said, fiscally, I'm in the middle. I think we can spend too much money here, not enough there. But I'm a capitalist with a little c because I believe in a lot of social programs. I love Medicare. I'm 70. That's great. Because you know what it is when you're young and people don't want it, it's because they're not old yet. They're not sick yet. Or they don't have
stuff falling off yet. Yeah.
Right. And Social Security, it's great. Some people, when they get older, they don't have anything besides Social Security. And a lot of the people I know that claim they hate socialism and all that, but they're glad to cash that Social Security check. And they're glad to use Medicare, which are both socialist programs. There was a record that was made a long time ago by Ronald Reagan. That was a completely, I guess it was an hour long or something. And it was him talking,
An hour long? Something.
I hear you.
Flash.
But I don't see you.
Uh-oh. We see you and hear you, so I don't know what the hell.
Okay, well, we knew that. What I was going to say, and he did this whole thing. He did this record where he said that the end of the United States and the end of capitalism is if anybody ever passes Medicare. Now you have Republicans going, "Don't touch my Medicare," and not realizing that it's a government, it's a government issued idea.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
See if I can get back here. I don't know what happened there.
Well,
that's weird.
We're still okay. If you can't see us, it's okay. We see you.
Collapsed the window or something.
Yeah, we see you. We hear you, and everything's groovy. Would you like to take a little break, Joe? Do you need to take a little break and come back, or what are you comfortable doing?
If you guys want me to stick around, I can take a short break to do a couple things. And
you can do that. Just
give me about 5 or 6 minutes.
Okay, we'll talk about something, and you go on. It's no problem.
Okay, I'll be right back.
All righty,
and I'll see if maybe I can reconnect when I get.
It's okay if you don't mess with it. You might mess it up.
All right.
It's okay. You're blessed if you can't see us.
Yeah, really. He's sandwiched between two bald guys with goggles.
Probably blinded him anyway with all this baldness. But Joe R. Lansdale, I've been reading him since like freaking elementary school or something. Like I told him that before break. But I have a Jonah Hex comic from the cover. Of course, it looks like hell now. But you can see it. A biker did it.
Yeah,
a long time ago. I'll have to show Joey, but it looks pretty rough. It looks okay, I guess, but could have been a little better. It was a long time ago after my dad died. But this is from that cover, Jonah Hex #1 by Joe R. Lansdale and Timothy Truman. Look up that his art. His art is amazing. That Timothy Truman guy. And Joe writing with it is just definitely really good. We were talking about. Have you ever seen Bubba Hotep, Jay?
No, and I was going to talk about that. I've actually used Bubba Hotep all the time. I never knew where I got it from. I've never seen the movie. Didn't know it was Joe R. Lansdale wrote it. And I saw it in my head, Bubba Hotep. But now I know where I got it from.
Joe wrote the book about it, and Don Coscarelli, Phantasm, did the movie.
Yep. The guy that did Phantasm.
All is well.
You said the guy that did Phantasm.
Did Bubba Hotep, the movie.
Wow. I saw Phantasm. That was pretty...
You haven't seen Bubba Hotep, though, yet.
Yeah.
You haven't seen Bubba Hotep yet?
No, I haven't. I'm going to have to look that one up.
You should find it. Bruce Campbell's Elvis.
Oh, really? I love Bruce Campbell.
There's a mummy that likes to suck souls out of your rumpus. It gets dropped off like this ancient mummy. He's Bubba Hotep. Some kind of Bubba Hotep. There's a mummy in it. He's the creature. It gets dropped off at an old folks' home by accident in a crate in the back of a truck. There's also a black man that claims he's JFK and he was dyed in it. His skin was dyed. It gets weird, but it's worth the watch. It's really good.
It sounds pretty messed up. So just kind
There's going to be a sequel, but there was a bunch of controversy. Something that it didn't happen for some reason because of Bruce Campbell, but or something, I forget exactly. But it's definitely worth the watch. There's a book. I have the books. And there's a prequel that came out, Cosmic Bloodsuckers.
Oh, Ozzie Davis is in it.
Yeah, that's the black guy that got died, the African American gentleman that got died. He claims he's JFK. He says he's a black JFK. He got died, and then now he's a black guy. It's weird, but the mummy's pretty cool too. Bruce Campbell is Elvis. You can't beat that, no doubt about it. I have the books and the prequel, and there's even some figures from NECA, that company, NECA, N-E-C-A.
Yeah.
There's a figure of the mummy and a figure of Bruce Campbell as Elvis. It's pretty cool. Who is next week? I always forget. I mean, look, next week's I got a big list of stuff that he's been telling us about to look at later. Next week is Wham. Yeah, next week's Wham. Jim Hunt is a dude from some ghost show on Amazon called Knock Knock Ghost. And then Micah Dank on Weird Bible Stuff. March 25th, Andrew Aloha. It's just metaphysical stuff. You come back April 1st for Aggie Nost.
Aggie.
Aggie Nost.
Yep.
The man, the legend, the hair.
Then,
it's got
his hair is taller than us.
His hair is an alien being.
Right.
He looks like Rod Stewart. And let's see here. Oh, and April 8th, Dr. Turi. He's been around forever.
How do you spell that?
Dr. Turi.
Okay, that's why I couldn't find him before.
He has been around forever. He's been with Art Bell.
Yeah.
And then the next week, April 15th, Dave Morris, Bram Stoker and the Occult.
Oh, cool.
And some other weird stuff. He's been on before about shadow beings, but he does all these videos. But I got him back on to talk about Bram Stoker and the Occult. I'm still scheduling. Scheduling's weird, but I'm slowly but surely doing it for sure. And then I still got to fill April 22nd, 29th, and all that, May 6th, blah, blah, blah. It gets monotonous scheduling, but I do it. Sometimes it's like a divine force helps me schedule because it gets so weird. Been doing it for so long.
Nice to have someone do it for us, but
Yeah, we can't afford that.
No.
Listen to United Public Radio 107.7 FM. And we got Joe R. Lansdale here, New York Times bestselling author Joe R. Lansdale. He's got a new Hap and Leonard book out, Born for Trouble. Wait, let me make sure I said that right. I said it earlier, but
I think that's right.
Born for Trouble, The Further Adventures of Hap and Leonard.
Yeah.
And that just came out. Edgar Winter, Joe R. Lansdale's newest Hap and Leonard story collection. The boys are back with more righteous ass-kickings, highly improbable adventures, and disastrous fishing trips. These never-before-collected tales showcase the popular, not-so-dynamic duo who are a little bit older but not a whole lot wiser. Hap and Leonard were truly born for trouble. Born for trouble. Hap and Leonard, there was a Sundance show that had 3 seasons. There's a question I want to ask him about that when he comes back. And then
novel out this year called Radiant Apples as well.
What is that?
Radiant Apples. It's by Subterranean Press. I'm getting it off of Wikipedia, but it's something that came out this year from Joe.
What is it? Oh, Radiant Apples.
Radiant Apples. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. It's a Western. I got to do some catch up with some of his books. I have a bunch of his books, but there's a bunch. Like I need to still look for sure. I know I have that one, a Western one. I forget, Patriot Sky or something like that. I saw that earlier. I have that. I know the publicist sent me that. But I have all the Jonah Hex comics. I have all the Jonah Hex.
Hello, guys.
Hey there. Welcome back. I was showing my Jonah Hex tattoo from a million years ago that's been through hell from that cover.
You might have to get a little closer.
And then a biker did it a million years ago in Panama City Beach, Florida. There it is.
There we go.
From that, it's old. It's after my dad died and I went crazy and got a Jonah Hex tattoo and a Dracula.
I wrote Dead in the West. That novel has to do with vampires and zombies versus a Western gunslinger, and that was back in the 80s when I did that.
Dead in the West. That's a good one for sure.
It was optioned a lot of time for film, and it was eventually bought completely by a French producer who never made it. Paid me a lot of money. And I was surprised at how much money I got off of that thing. It was optioned 11 times. I wrote it in the original. I'm embarrassed to say I wrote the original screenplay in one day, or a little bit longer than that. I started writing about 3 a night. This was before I had quit my job. Before I had just gone full time. I take it back. I just gone full time. But I started about 3 at night because for some reason that was the only time I could get started on it. And I finished it by 5 the next afternoon. So it's a little longer than that. But I pulled the last page out of a typewriter. And I did it on a typewriter, And my brother had a connection to some film people. And they took it and they wanted it. Then that folded. Then over the years, and Don Coscarelli and Bruce were going to do it at one point. And over the years, it just... option. I think I got 11 options. And then the French producer just bought the whole thing out. And I thought, well, he's going to make it. No, he didn't make it. Ridley Scott did the same thing with The Big Blow. He paid me a tremendous amount of money for a screenplay and optioned it for years. David Lynch had it before that for several years. And then they bought it. And I made a ton of money, but they never made the film. And it's been different scripts attached later besides mine. There have been different directors attached. and no one ever gets anywhere with it.
Yeah, I know.
Development hell.
Dead in the West was a novel, but you got paid. That's what matters with that, for sure. But I wish they would have made them. But Dead in the West was a novel, but is that two separate things? Because there's a Dark Horse comic too, right? So it's two separate things.
That's
right?
Based on the novel.
Okay,
that's based on the novel. What happened is I originally wrote a version of the novel that was serialized, and it was kind of a rough version. I was still learning to kind of get my stuff together then. I was about, just gone full time, and I rewrote it as a screenplay, and the screenplay was better. And so then I wrote the screenplay into a novel, which was better yet. And then it was made into comics. From time to time, there's interest in redoing those comics, and I think that's going to happen. I think that'll happen again. The book's still in print, and it's in print as Dead Man's Road because it contains other novellas with it about the same character.
Okay.
But Dead Man's Road
Dead Man's Road. Novella. So that is Dead in the West.
Included in that. Yeah, Dead in the West is the novel version in there, short novel, and then the rest of them are novellas.
So and
then there's new stories about him. The Hungry Snow is about him. That's a weird Western. And so that will eventually be collected too. I think there are 2 other stories about him. And I also wrote a big historical Western that's not weird called The Thicket, which Peter Dinklage was going to do for about 8 years. But eventually, after COVID stopped it a couple of times, he bailed on it, But I got paid again, some, not much. And then Paradise Sky is a epic Western about black cowboys in the West, based on all the research I had done for years. I remember when I tried to sell it in the 80s, they said, well, black people don't read and white people don't want to read about black people. And I thought, whoa. And so then in the 90s, I tried to sell it again, and they said, we don't know who our audience would be. So they were a little more politically correct, I guess.
Yeah.
And then in the 2000s, when I was at Holland, Little Brown, they said, yeah, it sounds like a great idea. And I went on to write a few stories and novellas about the same character. But those are straight Westerns, those 2. Magic Wagon somewhere in between. It's got a little bit of a fantasy element, but you can read it either way,
Is Hungry Snow about the Jebediah guy, or is it a different Weird West? It's the same dude from Dead Man's Road?
Same guy.
Cool. And
what I did do? I think when I wrote one of the stories for Weird Tales, I called him a different name. I gave him a different last name, borrowed it from one of the pen name Westerns I had written, and I didn't realize it till other people started pointing it out. So when it was reprinted, I corrected.
So have you come across any more Weird West from anybody else? I know you told me about Six Gun. Is there anything else that's going on your radar?
Oh, I've read a few here and there, and I've liked some, but nothing really jumps out. My son who wrote, he was a co-writer on The Pale Door, which is a weird Western. And I was a producer on that. And that was done about 2 years ago, I guess. Maybe a little longer than that. And you can see it on Shudder. It was on, I think it might have been on Prime originally or something. And
it's on my list.
But now it's on Shudder. If you have the Shudder channel, you can
sure do.
Yeah, it's called The Pale Door. And it's not perfect, but it isn't bad either. It's interesting. It has great people. It has people from Hap and Leonard. Bill Sage comes to mind, immediately. And it was a fun shoot. I was on the set for it a little bit, so I like watching that.
There's one movie I haven't seen it yet. Ghosts of the Ozarks. It's supposed to be a Weird West movie that came out with David Arquette and stuff, but I haven't seen it yet. Oh, it says Tim Blake Nelson's in it too. I didn't know that. The dude from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
I like him a lot.
Yeah, there's a good one. Did you see that one? What was that? Yeah. Old Henry?
Well,
Old Henry. Yeah.
Which one?
There was a movie with Tim Blake Nelson called Old Henry.
It's called Old Henry. Not Old Henry the writer, but Old Henry. No, but it's on my list. Have you seen The Ballad of Buster Scruggs?
Sure have. I like that a lot. Yeah. Watch Old Henry. That's pretty good.
Got a series of short stories. Some of them, right. There's one of the stories was a Jack London story, and there were like 2 or 3 stories that they had borrowed and adapted. And then the Buster Scruggs one was a real cool one. I liked it a lot.
I saw the Macbeth movie with Denzel Washington from one of the Coen brothers. It's worth the watch, but that Shakespeare stuff will do
I want to see that. I haven't seen it.
Definitely. I'm
Was it
trying
good?
to keep up with it. Yeah, it's good. It's really good. It's just keeping up with the Shakespeare stuff. That's hard for me. They get deep with it for sure.
I love Shakespeare.
Like, what the hell's happening? That's pretty much me. What the hell's going on? I don't know.
I love Shakespeare.
Yeah.
The only time when we were in London one time, we went to, where Shakespeare was born and grew up, and where he performed a lot of his plays, and not the London, but what is the place called? It's I'm having a blank here, but anyway, we saw a play that they did there, Romeo and Juliet, and yet it was done by English speakers, and it was done the old English, Romeo and Juliet. I couldn't understand half of it if I didn't already know the play. The accents like to killed it for me, so it was interesting. Romeo and Juliet is one of my least favorite plays by Shakespeare, which a lot of people love. It's one of those things I loved when I was 18 and found it kind of not so lovable when I got older. But my favorites are Macbeth and Hamlet and, some of the Julius Caesar. I like that one a lot. And some of the poetry,
Yeah, it's good. It's just figuring out what's going on. I know I've seen some of the movies. Titus, that was crazy. That with Anthony Hopkins and all that.
Titus Andronicus, yeah.
That was really
I never
good.
read that play or seen it. I don't know that one. Did you ever see the DiCaprio Romeo and Juliet? I didn't like it, but I'll tell you what, it was interesting because they updated it, and they put it in modern times or modern at that time. And
I didn't care for
that. It is unusual.
Yeah, has a good soundtrack.
And another one I liked was The Tempest. Did you ever see Forbidden Planet?
Yes.
The old science fiction film.
Yes.
That's The Tempest. That kind of makes it cool when if you've read The Tempest and you go, oh, okay, I get it, I see it. So it's fun in that respect,
It's one of Leslie Nielsen's first movies.
Yep, that's right.
Yep.
That's right. He was the hero, as I recall.
Yes. He was like second in command.
Yeah, but he was a serious actor. He wasn't a comedian until later.
No, he wasn't funny back then yet. Yeah.
No, not at all. He played a kind of stiff ass most of the time. He was kind of the straight laced kind of character actor. And in that one, he was a major actor because it was a science fiction film. But the science fiction film was done by Disney, and the special effects still are interesting. They're maybe not as good as things that could be done now or seamless, but they're really good. I mean, it was one of the first I saw like that. And it's a great story because it's The Tempest. Yeah.
An interesting story about that movie is almost all of the sound effects were recycled for the first 3 seasons of Star Trek.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So like the photon torpedo noises, the shields, all kinds of weird noises were taken from that movie.
Yeah. Well, Lost in Space, had Robbie the robot, very similar. I don't think he was called Robbie, but it was the same robot
B9.
in that series.
No, it's not the same robot.
Yeah.
Completely different robot.
No, but it's
B9.
similar.
Robbie the robot is in the Leslie Nielsen movie, and that's actually operated by a midget. There's a midget inside Robbie the robot, and he moves it. It's not a guy.
Robbie was in some television shows too.
Right. Yeah.
Robbie was in some television shows too. And George Martin has a replica of Robbie the robot. That they built.
A friend of mine who was a stunt actor for the Next Generation, he's got a full size Robbie the robot and a B9. He's got both of them.
Wow. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. Well, that's all. All these old films and stuff. That's what's fascinating is people forget or they can't make that jump. When we were kids, a lot of things were filmed on stage. They were just a stage. And they had like some plastic trees and they were moving them around, rubber trees, but we can make that jump without any problem. But you look at it now and you go, wow, how did I believe this? But there are times when I'll find old movies and I find them more satisfying than some of the new ones just because they're better stories and they're not all lights and, crap going on all the time. There's just so much that they did back then that they did by suggestion. And I don't always think suggestion's best. I always sometimes think more is more, but less is more a lot of times as well.
Yeah, that worked for Jaws because the shark didn't work. So, I mean, if you look at any good horror movie, you don't see the murderer until like the last 5 minutes. Like, so Friday the 13th, you don't know who the murderer is until the last 5 minutes of the show, and it turns out to be Jason's mom. You know, in Jaws, it's a shark, but you don't see the shark until the last 5 minutes of this movie, and it scares the, poop out of you. And my dad is a huge Peter Benchley fan, and this is one case. I think most of the time Hollywood destroys a movie when they do a book to a movie. I think Hollywood destroys them. Like the recent Dune, it's nice. Special effects are good, but they didn't really follow the book. The Jaws, the end of the book, Jaws, the shark swims into the boat, and then the sheriff swims out of the boat, and the boat sinks, and the shark drowns. It's kind of stupid. But in the movie, the shark swims into the boat, the sheriff shoves a scuba tank in his face, he swims away, the shark swims away, then he blows it up with a bullet. That's pretty good. That's the one instance I think anywhere.
Well, that's cinema. That's dynamic. Yeah. I think so. I think Benchley felt the same way. I think that he felt that there were, I actually like the book better, but I actually agree with you on some of those things, is that it's a marginal for me because I think the film is just wonderful. I think it's one of the great suspense films. I love it. And the thing in the book wasn't he like weighted down with harpoons or something, or injured, or I don't know, but he just drowned.
Yeah,
he quit swimming. That's what
the way I understand it. He was just stuck in the boat, and the boat brought him down. He couldn't get out.
You're right.
So Benchley must have done the research, because most sharks cannot stop swimming. If they stop swimming, they don't breathe, they die, they'll drown. So, and an interesting thing is, I don't know where they found this, but somewhere, maybe Bahamas, maybe Bermuda, there's a trench or a tunnel of coral that these sharks don't swim in, and they just sit there and they don't die. And they found out the reason was because there's a permanent current. So the shark just sits there and lets the current go through his gills, and he breathes.
I got it.
It's the only chance that I've ever seen sharks not moving. Yeah.
Well, that movie too was just such a revelation. It changed the way film was done. Nobody had done a film like that. It was a blockbuster summer, and then from that was the beginning, real beginning. That The Exorcist and things like that at that time were the beginning of the summer blockbuster film.
Yeah. Jaws
before that, it was the
first blockbuster. Yeah.
Right. And so they started following that pattern, and they still do.
Yeah.
Although I think now it's superheroes all the time, 24/7.
Right. Superheroes are science fiction, something with a lot of special effects and action. What I miss is the sense around stuff. So I don't know if you remember that. Like, they had Inferno and the Tower Inferno and the Titanic, or it was a story like the Titanic. I saw the pilot movie for Battlestar Galactica and Star Wars in sense around, and Battlestar Galactica was better than Star Wars, and the same guy did the special effects for both. If you remember Battlestar Galactica, they would get in those little fighter jets and they'd shoot out of the side of the ship. They'd do that number. Well, they had all the seats were engineered with like gimbals, and whenever that happened, all the seats were shot back at once, and you felt like you were in the real ship
action
with Richard Hatch as he was shooting out of the side of the Galactica to go shoot Klingons or Cylons or whatever. That was fantastic. Yeah. I think losing that, 3Ds are pretty cool. I saw the Avatar in 3D. That was. The movie was right here. Literally, I could felt like I could reach out. I didn't like
that movie. I liked the 3D, but I didn't like the movie. I've already forgotten it. I forgot it by the time I got home.
The 3D was the coolest part of it, but the sense around thing was really cool because you were immersed in the movie because like in the Tower Inferno, when it exploded, all the seats shook. So it would shake the whole audience. So you felt like you were in the tower coming down.
Is this like the remake or the original?
Way back in the Towering Inferno, the very first one, and then there's the movie with.
I only saw that on television, unfortunately.
I just
that one I only got to see on television.
What else? There's one with the actor's name was Shelley something or other. She played on the original Titanic movie, but it's Poseidon Adventure. Poseidon Adventure was in sense around. So when the ship started to sink, the seats went forward. Shelley Winters, yes, that's right. Yeah.
She was a real swimmer. She was known for being a swimmer. Yeah, she actually was, I think, had been a professional swimmer or was a good swimmer. I don't remember, but swimming was one of her things that she did well. If I remember right, I think I read that, and that's been a long time, but I think that's correct.
It's probably true. And to do a movie like that, you'd have to be a strong swimmer because you're in a room that's going to fill up and flood with water. But I do believe her character survived. Most everyone else died, but she survived that one.
I saw one recently that
when that movie came out, the special effects were so amazing. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. It's okay.
No, go ahead, man.
Oh, I was just going to say I saw This Island Earth for the first time with Christina.
No, I was just going to say that was a big blockbuster then, was Poseidon. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a huge one.
We're talking over each other. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
It's okay. I was just saying that I saw that movie This Island Earth for the first time recently with Christina. Have you seen that one?
Love it.
This Island Earth with the weird, the old one. With the
it's wonderful. I've seen it many times. Yeah, love it.
That's weird, isn't it? That's like some weird Illuminati, alien, crazy weird. There's some weird stuff going on there. The big heads
and the seamless ship. The door would open. It was seamless. It would close back up, and where's the door? Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. When I saw that, I was like, what?
A lot of Nikto, I think is what he was saying. Something.
Klaatu,
I remember seeing
Nikto.
Yeah, that's it. Right,
they actually stole
I saw
that
an episode of
other things
Rockford Files where he spoke to one of the thugs that way. A thug came up on him and he spoke to him and said, and so that was well known back then. You say it now, people don't know what the hell you're talking about, but that was common.
That's true. There's other movies that have used it. There was in one of the Star Trek original episodes used it. The one where they have the spirit of Jack the Ripper that goes through every crew member and tries to kill people.
Block used that, didn't he?
Huh?
Didn't Robert Block write that one?
He might have. I'm not really sure. I know Harlan Ellison. You mentioned Harlan Ellison. He wrote a lot of stuff for the Star Trek universe, particularly like in the animated series.
I knew Harlan. I don't know that he wrote a lot, but he certainly wrote that one, City on the Edge of Forever, which was like one of the, most famous episodes.
Very famous one. He did some stuff for the animated show as well. The first animated series. He wrote. Okay. He invented the cat-like people way before the Thundercats.
Oh, okay.
So they show up in the animated. Yeah.
He was. Did you ever see The Outer Limits? He wrote Demon with a Glass Hand and Soldier. That was good stuff. Demon with a Glass Hand is fantastic with Robert Culp. If you ever get a chance to see that on the original Outer Limits, it's fantastic.
I'll have to check that out. I didn't watch that as much as I watched the Twilight Zone.
I have them.
Where we grew up in Rockville.
That's my favorite.
Twilight Zone was really good too. What's his name? Rod Serling's brother lived in Rockville, and he made my sister's, when she was a kid, she made her dollhouse, and we went to school with his kids at one of the private schools we went to. So I met Rod Serling's brother, but I never got to meet Rod.
No, I didn't either. I met Richard Matheson, and I got to know Richard a little bit, and Ray Bradbury, I just met a couple of times in passing. Went to lunch with him once. But that Robert Bloch, who wrote Psycho, he and I got along pretty well, and I was close to getting closer friends with him when he got sick and died. But he wrote Psycho, he wrote some of the Star Trek, he wrote a lot of things like Alfred Hitchcock, and I mean, just the Thriller. I don't remember Thriller was before you guys' time, but Thriller was like in the early '60s, and they did Pigeons from Hell by Robert E. Howard. And at that time, that was the most frightening thing that had ever been on TV. It doesn't quite have that same impact now, but it's still pretty damn chilling if you get a chance to see it. And Robert Bloch stories were used for that. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper, The Hungry Glass, good stuff.
I have Robert Bloch's book, Night of the Ripper, a paperback that's in a plastic thing. It's, he's got the Ripper. Well, one thing I want to ask you about, and it's kind of depressing, but the Michael K. Williams situation, that was very tragic and sad that happened. That was just like, I'd seen him in Boardwalk Empire, Lovecraft Country. I know he's Hap and Leonard.
The Wire.
Definitely sucks so much. The Wire.
Well, Michael had a problem with drugs, and he was always open about it. I mean, when we were on the set of Hap and Leonard, I remember having kind of minor discussions with him and where he brought that up. I don't remember what initiated it exactly. And it was sad. I I was better friends with James Purefoy, but I did like Michael a lot, and we got along just fine. And it really shocked me and hurt. Well, I don't know if it shocked me. It surprised me. I wasn't shocked because I knew he had trouble with, drugs. And I mean, I always thought it was weird to act like, if it hadn't had that fentanyl in it, he'd have been fine. Well, he might not have been fine. That certainly was, makes it terrible because people put something that's definitely deadly. But heroin's not good for you anyway. It can end up killing you. And so I just think it's a terrible loss. And he was a good guy. I was a really good guy. I liked him a lot. I think that he had his quirks, but they were interesting quirks.
Definitely. He's a great actor. I had some run-ins with drugs when my dad died when I was younger, and now I just do medicinal weed here in Florida, and there's enough weird stuff with that to keep up for any drug you'd like. There's so many different. I just did Bubba Kush. Like, there's so many different cakes and galactic glue. Like, you don't need heroin. Just get some galactic glue.
Yeah.
Like, that's in Florida. Of course, it's expensive to keep up with the license. It's a ripoff, but at least it's not better than not having it at all. That's for sure. But Joe, it's we got about 5 minutes. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. It's always great to have you on, and I've admired your works for many moons. And thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, I like the variety of the discussion. That was great fun. And we may not all come down on the same side, but at least we got to hear some interesting views, right?
Yeah. We just free ball it.
That's right.
But your site's joerlansdale.com. And
on Twitter as well. And also I have a fan page. Yeah. Okay. There's a Facebook page, but I don't really use that, and I never set it up. But to have the fan page, I think you had to have that. But I've never been on it, but maybe once, and I did it by accident. So there's people that say, friend me. Well, I don't friend anybody because my fan page doesn't do that. So I never look at that. So
you've got a fan page, and then your personal page would have 55 friends on it.
Yeah, right. 55 friends, because I don't ever do anybody, But the fan page is, I don't know, 20, 30,000 or something. Then the Twitter business, I have no idea what that is. I do Twitter pretty often, but I don't really know much about it.
Yeah, I hardly use it.
It's there for promotion and sometimes to contact friends, but I'm kind of, and I've got the site www.joerlansdale.com. So if you get interested, there's where you can find me.
Check it out and go through his libraries. A lot of good ones, a lot of Weird West. I just found some more comics, Bizarre Hands, that I didn't know about. Check those out too on eBay.
Yeah.
So
those are adapted from my book. I have a book called By Bizarre Hands, a collection of short stories, but Dark Horse did them from that, and then Avatar did them, and they borrowed some stories from other things. But I didn't adapt any of those. My son actually adapted. So he started comics when he was, I bet he wasn't even 12, 13 years old or something when he did the first one or two. And then he and his sister and I wrote a story that was made into a Creep Show episode. And we wrote that when they were 8 and 12. They were 8 and 12, and we worked on it together. And then it was made into a Creep Show episode a couple of years ago.
What's his name so I can look up his comics? What's his first name? Keith. Okay, I'll check it out.
Lansdale. Yeah, and you might look up The Pale Door if you want to check out that Weird Western.
I have it on my list on Shudder for sure. I'll check it out.
It's a mixed bag, but it's what with the mixed bag, all right. But what's good in the bag is pretty good.
Yeah, I'll check it out. All right. Well, we appreciate it so much. Thanks, Joe, and definitely loved it. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
All right, everybody. You're listening to United Public Radio 107.7 FM New Orleans. That was Joe R. Lansdale. He's been around for many moons and hung out with Michael K. Williams on the set of Hap and Leonard and James Purefoy. And Michael K. Williams, I know, was in that Lovecraft Country and Boardwalk Empire, The Wire, too. I forgot about that. That was probably one of his first things that he was in. I still need to watch The Wire. It's supposed to be really good. A lot of weird undercover drug drama show, but that's a very popular show that did really good on HBO. And then, of course, Hap and Leonard, and definitely a great guest. And I already forgot who's coming on next week. I have bad memory.
Yeah,
bad memory.
I've forgotten.
Jim Hunt, that's right. Micah Dank, and then Andrew Aloha, then Augie Noss, Dr. Torrey, and Dave Morris coming up. So let's see. That's what's going on. There's a new show on HBO Max that's funny called Our Flag is Death, and it's a funny pirate show. It's about the guy. It's about Takiti Wakiti, that New Zealand dude that did the Thor movies and What We Do in the Shadows and all that. It's called Our Flag is Death.
I saw an ad for it when I was looking at HBO Max this afternoon, but I didn't click on it. So,
yeah, there's 3 episodes up. They're only 30 minutes apiece, but it's funny. It's got, I think that Hodor dude's in it from Game of Thrones. Hodor, hold the door. Hodor. But he's in it. Still watching Raised by Wolves. I think I might be a little behind on that. I'll have to double check. But all right, everybody. Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Joe. And UFO Ozark, check that out. Ozark Mountain UFO Conference. You get all those online too, and they have DVDs after the guests come on. Those are just to watch a bunch of UFO weird stuff and presentations. That's going to be in April, but you can also buy the DVDs on there and watch them, or watch it online too, I believe. So it's just a big UFO conference. A weirdy beardy, for sure. All right, everybody. We'll catch you next Friday. Stay out of trouble. Watch out for Pootie.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Ending broadcast.